What happens when an ordinary neighbor faces off against a self-appointed queen who throws a party in his own pool? You won't believe how his resolve and truth turned the whole situation upside down. You know that feeling when you put your heart and soul into something simple, something just meant to bring a little joy, and then someone with too much time on their hands decides to turn your life into a soap opera? That's exactly where I was when Karen threw her little surprise party in my pool. And believe me, it was no accident. Let me take you back a little. It was the kind of summer evening you'd want to bottle up and keep forever. The sun was dipping low, casting a warm, golden glow over the neighborhood, and the cicadas were doing their thing, giving the soundtrack that only a place like Lakeside could offer. I was out there in my backyard, sitting on the edge of my newly cleaned pool, feet in the water, just soaking up that peace. That pool wasn't just water and tiles to me, it was a sanctuary. After all the years of grinding, of putting food on the table and raising my kids the right way, that pool was my little slice of heaven. I had just finished fixing the filtration system myself, and man, that sucker was running like a dream. You gotta understand, for me, this wasn't just about cool water. It was about family togetherness. My wife, Lisa, had been through some tough health battles the last few years, and the kids needed a place to laugh, splash, and just be kids again. That pool was a symbol of hope, plain and simple. So that evening I decided to invite a few neighbors over. Not a big deal, just a casual get-together to show off the improvements and enjoy the weekend. I was grilling ribs, Lisa was prepping some lemonade, and the kids were running around with that wild, contagious energy only little ones have. Everything was set to be smooth and easy. But of course, nothing ever stays smooth when Karen's involved. You might know the type, Karen. The one who takes it upon herself to be the self-appointed watchdog of the neighborhood, armed with her clipboard, her high horse, and a knack for sniffing out anything she thinks is wrong. And let me tell you, Karen had been eyeing my pool since day one like it was some kind of crime scene. As soon as the first few neighbors showed up, Karen appeared on her porch, arms crossed, face like thunder. She started with the usual. Daniel, you know that HOA rules say that your pool is oversized, right? And the noise? It's disturbing the peace. I could practically hear the sound of her holier-than-thou attitude radiating from her voice. I gave her a smile, one of those let-me-handle-this smiles, and tried to explain that the permits were all legit, that the noise was barely above a whisper, but she wasn't having it. Then, without missing a beat, she dropped the bomb. If you don't shut this party down, I'm calling HOA, the cops, and maybe even a lawyer. This is harassment, Daniel. You're disturbing the entire block. For a moment, I just stared at her, thinking, lady, the only harassment here is your attitude. But of course, I kept it cool. I told her to give it a rest, that I was just trying to have a little family fun. But Karen was on a roll. She started lecturing the whole street, making a scene like she was running for mayor or something. That's when the crowd started to shift. Some folks gave me those eyes, you know, the maybe you should have kept it down kind of eyes. Others muttered about Karen's usual antics, warning her to back off. The tension was thick enough to cut with a butter knife. I could feel my chest tighten, not because I was scared, but because this nonsense was happening right here, in my backyard, where peace should have ruled. And just when I thought this circus might settle, Karen threw out the real kicker. She announced she was throwing a party at my pool. Yeah, you heard that right. Said she wanted to show everyone who really runs this block. Like she owns the place or something. I blinked. Ma'am, you don't even have a pool, I said, trying not to laugh. She just smirked and walked off like she owned the damn street. So, there I was, in the middle of my own yard, watching as the woman who could ruin a sunny day with her glare was plotting her next move. I had done nothing but open my gate and my heart to the neighborhood, and now I was getting treated like the villain in some bad TV drama. I walked back inside, feeling the weight of it all. Lisa gave me that worried look, one that said, I'm with you, but this is about to get ugly. The kids played quietly, sensing the storm without knowing exactly where it was coming from. I sat down, took a deep breath, and tried to remind myself why I put up with this nonsense. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't about Karen or her party. It was about standing my ground, about protecting the place where my family could be free to be happy. Little did I know, the worst was just about to start. What happened next changed everything. You won't want to miss how this all went down. You ever feel like your whole world flips upside down just because someone else decided to take a cheap shot at your peace? Well, that's exactly where I found myself just a few days after I thought maybe, just maybe, the Karen drama had simmered down. Spoiler alert, it hadn't. It was just gearing up for a full-blown showdown. That Friday afternoon, I was back in my backyard, fixing the loose tile on the pool's edge. A small task, but you know how these things go. Once you start, there's always some other repair that sneaks up on you. Lisa was inside, probably trying to keep the kids from turning the living room into a disaster zone while I was sweating it out in the sun. Then, like a storm brewing out of nowhere, the music started. At first, it was distant, just the kind of bass that makes your chest rattle a little, nothing too wild. But within an hour, it was like somebody cranked it up to 11. And then I saw them. Karen and her posse strolling right through my front gate like it was an open invitation. The nerve. The sheer, unapologetic audacity to just walk onto someone else's property and throw a rager without so much as a howdy. You ever had a stranger throw a party in your house? Well, multiply that by 10 and you've got my backyard that afternoon. Karen wasn't alone. There was her usual crew, loudmouths, troublemakers, folks who looked like they'd been waiting for an excuse to act a fool. They weren't here for a polite chat or to borrow some sugar. Nope. They came ready to take over. And take over they did. The pool area, once my sanctuary, was instantly transformed into a chaotic carnival. Cans and cups flew around like confetti. Someone cranked the music to a level that would make your eardrums beg for mercy. The kids' laughter was drowned out by the thump-thump of bass and the raucous yelling. Lisa's face when she saw the mess? I swear, it could have stopped a heart. I marched out front, jaw set tight, trying to find the words that wouldn't blow the roof off but still get the message through. Karen, I said, keeping my tone steady, this isn't your party. You need to pack it up. She turned to me with that smug smile, the one that says, oh, honey, you're about to learn your place. Daniel, she said slowly, I don't need your permission. This neighborhood is ours. And tonight, this pool belongs to me. I could feel the blood boiling but kept my cool. This is my property. You're trespassing and you're disturbing the neighborhood. Her eyes narrowed. You and your little property can't stop me. HOA's on my side. They're already looking into your illegal pool size and noise violations. You think you're untouchable? You could almost taste the arrogance in the air. It was like she'd been waiting for this moment, thirsty to drag me through the mud. And sure enough, she wasn't alone. Two other neighbors who usually hid behind polite smiles suddenly stepped forward, backing her up with whispers about complaints, rules, and respect for the community. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't just about a pool or a party. This was about power. About who gets to decide what peace means in this neighborhood. Karen and her little gang had weaponized every HOA rule, every rumor, every whisper of disturbance to try and crush me. So, what did I do? I did what anyone with a little pride and no patience would. I started documenting. I pulled out my phone and began recording. Every insult, every loudspeaker blast, every reckless move. If the system was going to be stacked against me, then I was going to fight back with proof. Lisa joined me outside, steadying my nerves. She handed me a cold bottle of water and whispered, we'll get through this. Together. The kids watched from inside, their eyes wide but hopeful. I promised myself I'd protect that hope no matter what. But the chaos wasn't done yet. By evening, the crowd had grown. Word spread that Karen's party at my pool was the place to be. Cars lined the streets for blocks, music pumping, laughter and shouting mixing into a cacophony that drowned out the night's peace. Neighbors who once nodded in passing now avoided eye contact. Some whispered behind closed doors, others openly sided with Karen, caught in the web of HOA politics and old grudges. At one point, I caught sight of Mrs. Thompson, the widow down the street, shaking her head. This ain't right, she muttered to her husband. But what could she do? What could any of us do when the powers that be had already chosen their side? Later, I got a call from the HOA president, a man I'd once considered a friend. Daniel, he said, we've received multiple complaints. This situation is getting out of hand. You might want to consider letting this go. Letting it go. Like I was some kind of nuisance to sweep under the rug. I'm not going anywhere, I told him. And neither is my family. I hung up and stared at the darkening sky. Somewhere deep inside, I felt a fire ignite, a determination that no noise complaint, no HOA threat, no Karen party could snuff out. But even as I stood there, surrounded by the noise and disrespect, a gnawing question crept in, how far would this go? How many battles would I have to fight before someone recognized that I was just trying to live in peace? This is where things really start to boil over. You won't believe what the next chapter has in store. Stay tuned. Let me tell you straight up, nothing prepares you for that moment when the whole neighborhood turns into a battlefield and you're the one standing alone, holding the line like it's the last damn thing you've got. That's where I was when Karen's party finally pushed me over the edge and I decided it was time to respond in a way nobody saw coming. By the time Saturday rolled around, my backyard looked less like a home and more like a war zone. The music? Louder than a freight train. The crowd? A mess of wild faces, all egged on by Karen's devilish grin. The pool, my precious oasis, was now a public swimming hole for every loudmouth with nothing better to do. Trash littered the lawn, bottles shattered, and people danced like tomorrow didn't exist, all right on my property without a single invite. I stood at the edge of the chaos, watching it unfold, stomach twisting. Lisa was on the phone, pleading with the HOA again. The kids were huddled inside, eyes wide, scared by the noise and the strangers. And me? I was done sitting back, done biting my tongue. That's when it hit me: if Karen wanted to turn my life upside down, fine. I'd give her a show she wouldn't forget. But I wasn't about to stoop to her level. Nah, I was gonna play it smart, sharp, like a chess master, not a pawn. First thing, I grabbed my phone and started live streaming. I wanted the world to see exactly what was happening here: the noise, the trespassing, the disrespect. People needed to know the truth, not just Karen's version. Within minutes, neighbors started tuning in. Comments poured in, some cheering me on, others stunned that Karen could be so bold. The support from the community started to roll in, slowly but surely. Suddenly, this wasn't just my fight, it was ours. Karen noticed the camera and gave me that venomous look like I was the one ruining her fun. But the party didn't stop. It only got louder. At one point, I confronted one of Karen's loudmouth friends, a guy with a booming voice and a chip on his shoulder the size of Texas. I asked him politely to respect the property boundaries. His response? A smirk and a laugh, like I was some joke. "This block's ours tonight, old man," he said, his words dripping with disrespect. That moment could have sparked a fight, but I held back. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me lose my cool. Instead, I just walked back inside, took a deep breath, and called the police again. This time, it wasn't just me. Dozens of neighbors called, filing complaints and documenting the mayhem. The police showed up, lights flashing, sirens blaring, but even then, it was a game of cat and mouse. Karen and her crew scattered, slipping away into the night like shadows. But the damage was done. My backyard looked like a battlefield the morning after. Broken chairs, empty cups, a carpet of cigarette butts scattered across the lawn. Lisa and I spent hours cleaning, while the kids helped as best they could, trying to make sense of what had happened. Through it all, I kept thinking, how did it get this far? How did a simple pool become the center of a neighborhood war? The answer was clear: Karen's hunger for control mixed with a system that turns a blind eye to bullies and power players. But I wasn't ready to give up. Not now. Not ever. That evening, I sat down with Lisa and laid out a plan. I wasn't just going to fight back with words and cameras. No, I was going to hit back where it counted, legally, publicly, and with all the firepower I could muster. I started researching HOA laws, local ordinances, and community rights. I found out about my own rights as a homeowner and how Karen and the HOA had been twisting rules to try and squeeze me out. I contacted local journalists, planning to get the story out there. The whole neighborhood needed to know what was really going on. More importantly, I leaned on my family harder than ever. Lisa kept reminding me that our home was worth fighting for. The kids, even with their scared faces, gave me the strength to keep going. And the neighbors? Some started showing up in my yard during the days, offering help, support, and encouragement. The tide was turning. Slowly, but it was happening. Karen's power, once so absolute, started to waver. She realized the game had changed. But she wasn't going down without a fight. She doubled down on the complaints, the rumors, and even tried to rally the HOA against me with letters and petitions. Yet every move she made just added fuel to my fire. I wasn't just defending my property anymore, I was fighting for respect, fairness, and dignity. For my family and everyone who'd ever been pushed down by someone like Karen. I wasn't just a neighbor anymore. I was a force to be reckoned with. This is the climax you've been waiting for. Stay with me to see how this all goes down, the payoff you won't forget. By the time Sunday rolled around, the neighborhood was buzzing louder than a summer beehive, only this time, the buzz wasn't about gossip or idle chatter. No, this buzz was charged with tension, anticipation, and a whole lot of hard-earned hope. For weeks, Karen's relentless push to turn my life upside down had felt like an unrelenting storm. But that day, the tide was about to turn. I woke up early, heart pounding, not from fear, but from a strange mix of determination and calm. I had spent every waking moment preparing, gathering evidence, reaching out to reporters, and most importantly, rallying my family and neighbors. The community was no longer a silent audience, it was a united force. Lisa, ever my rock, had set up a small stand in our front yard, decked out with signs that read, "Respect our homes, fairness for all neighbors, and stop the HOA bullies." Our kids handed out flyers to anyone willing to listen, their little faces fierce with the innocence of hope and the courage of youth. As neighbors gathered, sharing stories of their own run-ins with Karen or the HOA, I felt something I hadn't in weeks, a sense of purpose beyond just my own fight. This was about fairness, about standing up to a system that too often favors the loudest, the most powerful, and the most unyielding. The day unfolded with the kind of drama that could have filled headlines. The local news crew arrived, cameras rolling as I laid out the timeline of Karen's campaign of harassment, the illegal takeover of my property, and the stonewalling by HOA officials. I spoke plainly with the raw honesty that comes from years of struggle and the fire of righteous anger. Karen, predictably, tried to spin her own version. But as the cameras panned the aftermath, the trashed lawn, the smashed pool furniture, the mountain of complaints, her words fell flat. The community saw the truth and the weight of it pressed hard. The HOA board was forced to convene an emergency meeting. For the first time, their smug faces showed cracks of worry. I wasn't just a disgruntled neighbor anymore, I was the voice of every homeowner tired of being pushed around, the spark that ignited their own fight for justice. When it came time for the vote, it was unanimous. Karen's party privileges were revoked, the noise complaints dismissed as unfounded, and the HOA was ordered to respect property rights. They had to pay restitution for damages to my property and issue a formal apology. But the victory wasn't just legal or financial. It was personal. Karen showed up at the meeting, face flushed, her usual arrogance replaced by an uneasy silence. When our eyes met, I saw something I didn't expect, a flicker of recognition, maybe even regret. She didn't say a word, but that look told me that the power she'd held so tightly was slipping away. The neighborhood breathed a collective sigh of relief. Doors that had been closed, fences that had felt like barriers, now felt a little less heavy. Families gathered, conversations restarted, and the peace we'd fought for began to return. At home, Lisa pulled me into a hug, whispering, "You did it. We did it." And for the first time in weeks, the kids splashed freely in the pool, their laughter ringing pure and unburdened. That night, sitting by the pool under the stars, I realized something important. This fight wasn't just about a backyard or a party, it was about standing tall in the face of injustice, about finding strength in community, and about refusing to let anyone steal your peace. Karen's reign was over, but more importantly, my family's joy was restored. And as for me, I knew one thing for sure, no one was ever going to make me feel small in my own home again.